Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll give you folks just a minute or two to get logged in before we kick things off. We've got a full house today with a couple hundred ladies joining us, so great to have a big group. And guys, too. Glad to have you join as well. Great. Well, my clock says we are 5 minutes past the hour, so we will go ahead and get started. My name is Isabelle Powell, and I'm the National Director of Women's Engagement at the Manufacturing Institute. And hopefully you all are somewhat familiar with the Manufacturing Institute, either as a past STEP or Women Make Award winner, or maybe as a mentor or a mentee in our Women Make mentorship program. If you're not, please reach out to us at womenmake@nam.org so we can make sure we get you plugged in. Today's discussion is a part of our 35 by 30 campaign, which was designed to help increase the number of women working in manufacturing jobs from 29% to 35%. And as a part of that campaign, we'll be hosting in-person and virtual personal and professional development events. This virtual event was designed to help you think about the next steps that you can take to help leverage and grow your talents and network to move forward on your career path. Before we dive into the conversation, I want to touch on just a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded, and it will be shared with all of our registrants next week. For that purpose, all participants, besides our panelists, will be muted. But if you do have a question, please use the chat feature, and our team will track and compile those questions so we can take some time at the end to address them specifically. Now, I want to make sure that the chat feature is working. So please let us know where you're listening in from by typing it into the chat. I'd also be curious to see if we do have any of our past STEP or Women Make Award winners in the audience. So if that's you, please let us know which year you are recognized. Okay, I see folks coming in from all over. A lot in North Carolina, which is where I'm from, Idaho, Pennsylvania, Guadalajara, Oregon, Texas. Great. Glad we've got a diverse group. So I mentioned the Women Make Awards, and speaking of that, I want to go ahead and introduce our panelists for today. Two of them are actually past winners themselves. So Hannah, let's start with you. Can you share who you are, what you do, and how you got connected to the Women Make America team?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hannah Pearl. I work at DENSO, which is a tier 1 automotive supplier. We're a global company. We have about 175 associates across the globe. And then in my facility in Battle Creek, Michigan, we make thermal products for heating and cooling in your vehicle. And we have about 2,500 people and a 1 million square foot facility. So lots of interaction every day. And in DENSO, I'm an advanced industrial engineer. And how I got connected with the Manufacturing Institute is I was an award winner for Emerging Leader in 2023 for the Women Make Awards.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Hannah. Stacy, will you introduce yourself next?
Oh, I'd be glad to. Thank you, Isabelle. My name is Stacy Putman. I work for INEOS. We're a privately owned chemical company. We have about 4,000 employees here in the United States. I was first introduced to the Manufacturing Institute through some advocacy work that I was doing years ago. And then in 2015, I was INEOS's first nominee ever for the Old STEP Award. And I was so fortunate to be honored by that award in 2016. And so I've got to learn a lot more about the Manufacturing Institute, not just from an advocacy standpoint ever since then. So really glad to be here today.
Great. Thanks, Stacy. And Megan, I'll let you round us out.
Hi, everybody. My name is Megan Stewart. I am a coach both for career and life goals, primarily focused with helping women achieve their goals, whether it's thinking about a career transition or just thinking about how they can hit their goals and get to the next step and level up. I spent all of my career coaching and managing high-performing revenue teams, both in sales and account management at several different organizations that were publicly held, privately held, and not-for-profit. And what has always given me the most joy in my work is helping to see people grow and hit their goals and reach the next apex and turning their 8 to a 9, 9 to a 10, and then redefining their 10. So I'm excited to be here for this conversation today.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. I'm glad that you're here too, because I think your perspective specifically will help tie a bow around the personal experiences that Hannah and Stacy will share. So that way, our listeners will be able to translate these individual experiences into some of their own lives and careers opportunities. So on that note, Megan, I'd love for you to kick things off, just kind of providing some framework about what is career coaching and how can it be a helpful tool in setting goals?
Yeah, so I moved into career coaching as actually a professional development goal of my own. A couple of years ago, when I realized how much I enjoyed working with my team, I realized I wanted to get some more formal training in how to coach individuals. And so the most important thing to remember when you're thinking about career coaching or even personal coaching is that you are whole, creative, and resourceful. So a coach is here to help you get to your goals or get to the objective that you're hoping to get to. And the assumption is that you have all the answers. We're just here to guide you to help you get there. It's really exciting when people are able to identify their own resources and tap into areas of themselves that they didn't even realize they had to be able to kind of get to the next level or figure out what they want to do next, or sometimes even just reach clarity on something that they are struggling with.
Makes sense. Sounds easy enough, and I know it takes a little bit more time than just that. So I guess my question to our manufacturing panelists would be, how have you established career goals? I'm not sure how familiar you all are with career coaching, but maybe you have some tips that you've used on your own that have helped you kind of set things in motion initially. Hannah, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so for myself, my career goals have been pretty standard until my most recent promotion to advanced engineer. And so I knew starting in a company back in 2017 as an intern that eventually wanted to be full-time and then get a senior promotion and advanced promotion to engineer. So for those, we had a set list of experiences I needed to get before becoming that engineer. And now I'm kind of in a weird spot where I don't have that black and white, cut and dry opportunity for my career. And so it's kind of scary, but also fun. And so the first thing I did was kind of figure out, what do I like to do? I'm an engineer, but there's certain things I love about my job and maybe things I love a little less. And so I actually went through it's from Gallup, who does the Clifton Strengths. It's called 5 Clues to Talent. It kind of talks about like what you love to do, what are things you naturally go towards, what do you learn quickly, and set that up so I could see like, what do I like to do? Maybe it's not industrial engineering as the next step, maybe it's something else, but kind of broadening my horizon to career path, since it's been always industrial engineering. I literally chose to be an engineer in like 6th grade when we built a roller coaster. So I need to open my viewpoint a little bit. And so I use that to figure out that I love project management and I love people. And so that's kind of how I set up my next steps, and those goals is around those two things that I love. So it might not be industrial engineering, it might be project management or a coaching role, and just finding what I love and my values is kind of helping me broaden those horizons right now.
That makes sense. And Megan, I've heard you talk about that a lot too, that aligning your next step or your goals with things that you like make them a little bit easier to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love hearing Hannah use the term values because it's something that we all talk about. We all know we have them, but having the time and taking the space to name those and understand what they mean for your life can be really, really helpful as you're figuring out what comes next. So to Hannah's point, she mentioned coaching. So maybe one of her values is connection with others or empowerment or encouragement. Knowing those things about yourself can really help you really broaden the thinking on kind of what could come next for you, but also in cases where maybe you need to figure out what to say yes to and what to say no to. If something is going against those values, perhaps you do have a value of connection. You don't want to go into a role that would have you working and, by yourself and having little connection with others during the day. So those are always really helpful to be able to be unpacking and thinking about as you're defining what comes next.
The other thing I was glad you mentioned, Hannah, is that your company provided specific like check marks or boxes to hit so that you knew you were on the right path to getting to the next promotion or what have you. I get that question a lot, and I think that's a helpful tool for companies to consider, to really lay out clear expectations so people can measure themselves against it and know that they are moving in the right direction at the right pace. So appreciate that. And for those of you on an HR team or maybe a leader that's looking to hire or promote, some helpful tips for you there. Stacy, I want to pivot to you because I know you mentioned earlier in your career you didn't have opportunities like this with career coaches. So can you talk a little bit about what you've done to set goals for yourself along the way?
Yes, sure. Glad to do so, Isabelle. That's right. I've been in our industry for 42 years, been in manufacturing pretty much the whole time in petrochemical and refining here in Texas and California. And yeah, when I started, the idea of a coach really wasn't something that was discussed at work. It wasn't something that was on offer, as it sometimes is nowadays, a little bit more prevalent. And I was excited to be an engineer and get out of a small town in West Texas and get to work and put my skills to work. And over time, what I began to discover is what I'm interested in and what else I want to learn. I definitely wanted to pursue things that I enjoyed, but I also wanted to pursue things that were hard, that were a challenge for me. And so I would spend time with others in my company and even in my networks for AI CAME or a more local group of engineers to find out what else engineers do and what else I could get into, what other parts of the business besides production or operations. I was surprised to find out there were so many engineers in commercial years ago and things like that. So finding new things I wanted to learn, and then eventually learning where I can really, as someone has already said here this morning, find my joy, or what do I like to do, or where do I feel like I'm really finding flow at work. And eventually I became a Six Sigma Master Black Belt and was provided a coach at that time, and then looked for challenges. And so in the last 15 years, I've always said, I want to go somewhere where it's really hard. Maybe I can get dirty, and there's some impossible challenges that we need to solve and bring value. And so as my career's gone on, I found that it's most important to me, and I am most happy at work, and I feel like I've been the most successful when I understand the value I'm bringing in the job and into the company. And that's where I want to be. That's what I want to be delivering on a day-to-day basis. And this is the value I'm bringing. And so that's just really been a key focus for me. And I found a lot of people along the way that can help me find that. But also some of the people I worked with in the early days who knew me really well when I was forming my professional life, I often go back to them and check in.
Yeah, I'm glad you still have those friends and colleagues and mentors around from the past. We talk a lot about building a personal board of directors. And so that includes all different types of support, some from your own team and company, and some totally disconnected from you, but they're all important. So, Megan, can you talk a little bit about what types of connections and individuals can be helpful, and what Stacy's talking about, and how to identify who might be the right person to approach or reach out to?
Yeah. The first thing to think about is who are people that you've come across where they're really interesting to you, and you might even just want to get to know them better as a person, or you're really interested in something that they've done in their career, regardless of whether they're in the same field as you or in something totally different. I find that most people are very happy to be complimented on something that they've done, and it's a great way to say, hey, I saw you did this. It's really interesting. Would you have a few minutes to connect? Almost anyone will say yes. The other thing to remember is when it comes to networking, there's an expression that says a friend can be a friend for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. So can a great networking connection. You don't have to make sure that you're having conversations with those people every week, every month. Sometimes it may be more sporadic and the person is still really, really helpful. Sometimes it's more of a peer relationship where you're helping each other and you're connecting on a very regular basis. So don't be afraid to be thinking really broadly about what those relationships look like, and not just on, what maybe you can gain from that person, but also what you can offer to them as they're also trying to learn.
Sure, it makes sense. We hold a free mentorship program. It's called the Women Make Mentorship Program. And I've seen from a lot of the women that participate, they view themselves as coming in as a mentee, thinking I need to learn more. I'm not ready to be a mentor. And a lot of the feedback that we've gotten at the end of the program is that they've played a dual role where maybe they were younger with less experience, but had unique experiences that they could share. So yes, I would encourage folks, you may feel like you're going in to learn something, but you all have something to give as well. So thinking about connections, let's just start from step one, making an initial connection. Megan, I like your example of complimenting someone. I feel like this day and age, there are almost too many ways to connect, and it's kind of hard to tell which ones are most effective and most meaningful in person, virtual, at work, online. So, Stacy, have you had any specific experiences as far as that initial outreach that have been memorable that you might recommend others to try if they haven't yet?
Yeah, one that comes to mind, Isabelle, is there was a woman who was in a leadership position, and I was kind of curious about where she was, how she got in that position, what was her background, and I wasn't sure how to approach her, and so I thought about it. I didn't just act on that impulse. I was fortunate; I had some opportunities to be around her, and I found a connection through Boy Scouts. My son was a Boy Scout. She and her husband had a connection to Boy Scouts, and it opened that door. So there was already something that was starting to connect us right there. It wasn't just I want to do an interview with you about your career. Although I've had a lot of people in my career come to me and say that as well, but I really wanted to know some deep questions about her career path. And so this was before LinkedIn. This is before a lot of social media, so I couldn't go online and find those connections. But I just listened and waited to find like what would be an interesting connection for her as well as for myself. And we became friends. Her husband and my husband and I became friends. It was interesting hearing her story and some of the pitfalls. She was really comfortable talking to me about some of the mistakes she had made, and I think that was really important too, to build a relationship first, then become vulnerable, allow that to happen, and that kind of thing. So that was a really surprising twist on how we connected. It was really worthwhile.
Yeah, that's great to find a personal connection outside of just professional. I think it adds a level of connection there. Hannah, any examples in your life that you've either reached out to someone or had someone connect with you in a way that was meaningful?
Yeah, I think the most I've found connections and the most meaningful connections. Obviously, I see people day to day in my regular job, but saying yes to kind of consider them like extracurriculars within my company. So I run our women's network, and so I've had so many connections outside of people I wouldn't meet normally through my job in the company. And then also just randomly like recruiting at a college career fair, so you can meet those set of like a different set of people. And so some of my most meaningful connections are actually outside of kind of my daily normal job sphere of influence. And having those, and then also kind of having that connection when you really don't know where to go or need to kind of get out of your comfort zone and learn about something new has been really valuable to me as well.
Yeah. I'd be curious in the chat, how many of you all have women's groups or ERGs at your company? And if so, is that something that's pretty popular? I think post-COVID, it's been an interesting option with so many folks not being in the office, although we know our production workers are there every day. So an interesting dynamic as those start to grow. Hannah, you mentioned some extracurriculars, and Stacy, I like that you even tapped the Boy Scouts. When you're thinking outside of your, traditional professional networking options, what are some other places where you've been able to develop skills that translate into the workplace? And Stacy, I want to start with you because when we last spoke, I thought it was very interesting that your response to this was hospice, which was not on my bingo card for anything related to a manufacturing job. So can you share a little bit about that experience and how other folks might think about extracurriculars that can help them professionally?
Sure. First of all, I have a burning desire for self-improvement. I like to learn and how to improve myself, and I always want to do a good job. And so I was had about a 4.5 year assignment in California, and didn't have a lot of free time. I was site director for a big site, but I did have some. And so I was a hospital volunteer for a lot of reasons, and I got in a role that was really important. It was a hospice volunteer, and I had some training by the hospital but that's not a setting in life where you have a do-over usually, right? And so you really want to do well. So I went for some advanced training while I was in that role for 4 years. And the training that I learned about my own biases, about how to set that aside, how to be very present with others, was probably the secret to my success in that particular position running that plant, was what I had learned through hospice. And I think there's just a lot of opportunities that maybe my employer doesn't provide them, but I wanted to go and pursue that on my own dime. I had a particular person that worked with me who was a police officer, and he talked about how important it is to, of course, attend your company's training, but to do really well, sometimes we need to go and do some of that on our own ticket. And I took that to heart, and some of that training is the best I've ever had in my life.
That's awesome. I love that story. Was always memorable to me since we last spoke about it. Hannah, I know your extracurriculars have been a little bit more tailored to your specific role, and actually saw on LinkedIn you have a recent new certification. So can you talk through some of maybe the educational opportunities that the audience might want to consider as they think about what's worth investing in to help you progress?
Yeah, so I just this past weekend took and passed, luckily, my project management professional certification. So, like I mentioned before, when I kind of looked at what do I love about my job, project management has always been a common theme for me, even in college, and then even in our women's network, aligning our events and all of that has always been project management. So I keep reinventing the wheel. So I wanted to formalize that training, and I think that's probably where I like kind of got the idea. Also, like you said, that having a board of directors is really important. I have many mentors, which has really shaped my career for the better. And one of my mentors is a program manager right now at a company. And so he suggested that I look into project management and program management as a potential career path. And so having that formal aspect of education for that and that certification is I wanted to formalize that since I was reinventing the wheel so much anyways. And so if there's something, I guess my piece of advice of it and like kind of how I got into is it was something I love to do. And I just wanted to understand what others are doing there and what are the best practices. And so I could accelerate my own learning. And then also I love teaching others. So being able to have that formal training is going to allow me to teach others in my company about project management as well.
That's awesome. The scholar becomes the teacher, which we've
Yeah.
learned you can be both at once, really.
Mhm.
I want to stay with you for a minute because I was looking in the chat and I see all kinds of ERGs. Some of you call them BRGs, and I always love the initials we and will and win and all sorts of great things that you can do. Some of the topics you all mentioned in there go from training, which we've touched on, to allyship, which Hannah, I heard you just mention one of your mentors and referred to it as a he. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the benefits that you've seen of having both a male mentor and a female mentor as a part of your own personal board of directors.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the biggest thing I have basically two or three male mentors and then one female mentor. And I think, well, first off, there's not many women in leadership in manufacturing normally, which is something trying to fix. And we're actually have been hiring at my company quite a few women in leadership. And so it was kind of born out of necessity first. My first mentor was one of my bosses. And even after he left the company, staying with him. But I think it gives such a good perspective. And then also, I might not understand in a meeting or have maybe I don't have the right backup in a meeting, and I know that he'll be kind of my like accomplice and be there for me as well, and also be an advocate. And even like with our women's network, my co-chair is a man, and then also we have a lot of our members are as well. And so I think for me having the male mentor has kind of allowed me that different perspective and then given me kind of the traditional manufacturing way of thinking. And then having that board of directors and having my mentor Heidi as well, she kind of gets me a little more sometimes. And there's some things you don't have to explain. Like imposter syndrome is something that men don't get a lot of the time. So I've had to explain that to quite a few of my mentors. And so they understand it now. But there's kind of just something inherent that every woman understands about that as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people on this call can probably relate to that. You mentioned not a lot of women in leadership roles in manufacturing, which is, of course, something that the Women Make team is trying to change. Stacy, I would consider you a leader in manufacturing, and I think part of your job is specific to leadership training. But what I also love about your story is that you didn't have quite as direct of a career path to get where you are. So I'm just curious. I know you talk a lot about the importance of exploration, but can you talk a little bit about what you maybe said yes to get where you are, or the route that you had taken that maybe you weren't expecting?
Yeah, it was very circuitous and involved some pretty interesting tasks and roles that I really was not expecting. When I got my bachelor's in chemical engineering, I was just ready to go do a bunch of chemical engineering, and I have always worked in companies that hire chemical engineers. But after the first few years of working as a kind of a regulatory type role with some of my chemical engineering, I moved on to some commercial roles, which were really interesting. One of the things about the way I was trained as a chemical engineer decades ago was we're very process oriented and systems oriented. And I began to see how applicable that is. Yeah, I'm trying to keep the flow in the pipe for sure, but sometimes that's information. Sometimes that's not something that's solid, liquid, or gas at all, right? It's something else. I then took a yes opportunity to become one of the first black belts in our company. Didn't know anything about Six Sigma, never heard of Lean. I'd never been to Michigan, didn't know anything about Japan, any of that. And that involved a lot of interesting startup type efforts, a lot of change management efforts to get the organization to take that on board. I then got a really nice promotion out of that. And when I asked about why was I being offered this, what did you see? What are my skills? What have I been successful at that you liked? And it was the ability to take on any task that needed to be done. And the vice president that was talking to me said, I remember watching you multiple times sharpen 40 pencils every day before you got to go teach the yellow belt class. And I knew that you would be a great leader because you were not above sharpening all of those pencils. So it was pretty funny, and we just have to get things done, right? I'm surrounded by sandwiches and cookies right now because we're hosting 85 of our top leaders in our company. Whatever it takes, we're going to get it done. I said yes to a very unusual opportunity to go to California, take on a site that was operating well below performance, near shutdown stage, that kind of thing. And we were able to turn that around in 8 months, using some of my Six Sigma skills, but also highly engaging the workforce in a way that they've never been engaged before. And I think the yes is a part of your exploration. The yes is there's a lot of things you do know, but there's several unknown things that we don't know. So those unknown unknowns, and working with people you trust, and they make an offer to you to go and try something. I've been uncomfortable many times, and I have learned over the years to get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And that's been just really a joy.
Sorry, y'all. I think I had a couple minutes of technical difficulty, but I'm back. And Stacy, the takeaway I got from that was say yes and believe in yourself and be open to new opportunities and put in the work once you get there. I guess my follow-up question would be to Megan, and to think about how do we put ourselves in positions to be recipients of those opportunities? Are there questions we should ask our supervisors or leadership, or how do we get the feedback that tells us, yeah, we're considering you and you could step into this next role?
Yeah. Well, one thing I love about that story is the anecdote about sharpening the pencils, because you mentioned working with people you trust, but I think by doing that, you show that you can be trusted as a leader, right? You're anticipating the needs of other people that you are helping through the yellow belt training, and you're just showing, to your point, that you're not above any of the things that need to be done as a leader. I think being able to demonstrate those things, but also just not being afraid to step forward and say, hey, I'm really interested in growing in this way, or I'm really curious about this process and I'd like to learn more. To the point that Hannah made earlier about imposter syndrome, I think sometimes we worry that just because we don't have experience in something means that we aren't able to step forward for it. But the only way to get experience is to put yourself out there to get that experience. So would really encourage people, if there is something that you're really interested in, maybe you're interested in how your organization does budgeting and you want to know more about that and you want to know more about how the numbers fit together. Ask somebody. I'm sure somebody would be happy to teach you a little bit more about it. And then that opens up your whole world to be able to, have a more diverse skill set. So just being able to get really curious, intellectual curiosity is such a valuable trait. Get curious, ask questions, and step forward and be willing to raise your hand.
It can be a hard balance though, because you've got to maintain, your day-to-day responsibilities while you're trying to build and gain new experiences. So I'll open it up to any of you on advice on how to balance that. I think it's a part of the work-life balance, but even just part of the work balance. How do you keep up what you need to do now, but also build so you can get where you want to go? And Stacy, I see you've unmuted, so I'm happy to let you kick that one off.
Yes, Isabel, that is a real challenge. And I think that you've got to understand your own pace. And there are going to be times where you're overwhelmed. And there's going to be other times where you might suddenly feel like, I don't have enough to do. What do I do about that? But I think you need to always be meeting people, listening, thinking, and observing what's going on around you, and where there might be the next opportunity, and get ahead of the game and talk to people about, hey, if you have an opportunity come up in the future, let me know about it. It is work. It's called work for a reason. It is hard. But when you're, what I have found, when I'm in that flow, I can take on more, right? I can take on more. I've got 2 children, grown, adult, 4 grandkids now, but in those times with those young children and at home, it was a lot of work. And we had to figure out what the balance meant. And there were sacrifices on everybody's part. But we found that for our family, it was worth it because I'm happier. I'm going to be jamming. I'm not going to want to sleep maybe that night anyway, because I've got this whole new wonderful spreadsheet I'm creating and I can't wait. And I'm so glad I got that opportunity. But it has been overwhelming. That's for real. And I have missed things I didn't want to have to miss. And I've had to figure out in life, there's going to be those opportunities, but there's also going to be missed opportunities home and at work. And I have to be selective about what I choose. I will have some regrets. I try to make sure those are never in the family sphere. And, don't try to be everything to everybody all the time. That's kind of the challenge for, those of us that really want to achieve. But opportunities are going to come. You're going to have a long career. I don't know how many people on this call have a career longer than 42 years. I never thought I would have one that long. And so you're going to have time. So pace yourself.
I could just chime in for a moment. What you said, Stacy, really resonates with me because outside of my coaching work, I do have a full-time job. I also have 2 young daughters who are 4 and 8. So what you're describing is really real. I'm really in that right now. And one thing that helps me personally, I know boundaries is a really popular word right now, just kind of in the culture, but knowing what is really important to me and where I do want to kind of create a little bit of a fence around certain times a day has been really, really helpful. So I certainly work a lot of hours and I try to take every opportunity that comes, but I do try to keep sacred some time kind of between 5 and 6:30 with my girls every day where I'm not looking at screens and I'm not dialed into work, knowing that probably in that 90 minutes, if there is a true emergency, somebody will call me, but probably things will be okay. So I really encourage, especially my fellow moms of kids, to be thinking about where are some places that you can draw some boundaries that aren't necessarily going to, sequester you from every opportunity or keep you from doing your job, but will also enable you to focus on things in your personal life that you feel really strongly that you want to invest your time in.
Yeah, good advice, Megan. I've heard a quote once that said, you can have it all, just maybe not all at once. And I often remind myself of that. Hannah, I'm curious your perspective as someone that is still very actively and successfully kind of climbing up the ladder. How do you find that balance of getting done what you need to do now to keep your current job, but also finding new opportunities to build on that skill set for what's coming next?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say I'm very lucky with the management structure I have, that personal development, and then also with the DENSO Women's Network. Those are things that are highly valued with my department. And so that really has made it an easy discussion when I need to do those extracurriculars. Um, but I find that sometimes I'll have to put in the extra hours, which is not an easy answer. And then also I learned a huge lesson last year, which is you can't say yes to everything, like Stacy and Megan have been saying, and you need some boundaries. So that has been the biggest exercise in this past year, is learning to say no. Sometimes that's things for my women's network or for my extracurriculars outside of work. And sometimes that's for my job as well, that we're project based. So maybe I will take one less project, so I have opportunities for all of these things. But saying no and asking for help or things that I'm still not great at them, I'll be honest, but things that I've had to learn to know. And then also I didn't understand my limit until I hit it, and I got super burnt out, and then knew kind of, okay, I can't do 5 projects, I have to do 4 projects. And understanding that it's not fun at the time, but I'm really happy I learned that in the long run in the first couple years of being full-time in my career.
Yeah, they say if you're going to fail, fail fast, and then move on to the next thing. So some of those are just life lessons that you realize as you go through the motions of it. But important, yes, we've talked about say yes to opportunities that make sense, but don't feel obligated to say yes to everything. So I have just a few more questions for you all, and then I am going to pause and take some questions from the audience via the chat. But I just have 3 left. So the first one would be tips for networking within your company versus outside of your company. I know we touched on this a little bit, but if you can be specific in examples of maybe showing up to places, what you have said yes to, those types of conversations, whether on your team or with a broader group, I think it's always helpful to have examples that people might be able to look for at their own company or in their own community. And Stacy, I see you've unmuted, so I'm happy to start with you.
Yes, one of the things I did early on in my career that really seemed to pay off when I look back is when I would be invited to meetings and there were people there that I didn't really know, but maybe that we worked together, then I would take that opportunity to connect for real and email them or go over to their desk or call them. Back in the day, it was mostly call and say, hey, that was a great meeting. I want to know more about what you do. And so that, when I need to call on you in the future, I'll know when and why, and say vice versa. And so I'd really like to connect with folks that way. We work together. We're clearly on the same page, at least about one thing, and that's this company we work for. And so what else can we do together? What else do we have? So there's that piece internally, and I still do that. I always sit by people I don't know. Always, because it's easy to go sit by somebody I do know. I can do that anytime. I can just go say, hey, I know you. Let's go sit next to each other, Isabelle. And so really wanting to know more about folks and how we can work together. And then externally, networking. I've always loved networking through professional organizations, the ones that fit my schedule. Were the ones I went to first whenever the kiddos were little. And then now, because the way we can connect so virtually, I love all the social media connections and finding people who have a common purpose externally. So I do a lot of leadership development as well as workforce development, and really wanting to help those K through 12 teachers and students get into manufacturing roles or the roles that they are destined to be in that'll make them the happiest. And so finding others to collaborate with on those things. And that's what I found to be so fascinating is, and go to a meeting and we're all hearing a speaker talk and then say, hey, who wants to talk more about this meeting? Let's go get coffee. And I have been astounded who will show up for that after we sit there, 45 of us from leaders in industry in Houston, Texas. And then we all head over to, the local coffee shop and connect even more. And that has been amazing. And I think that's something we need post-COVID. We need to keep working that connection, keep working on being together.
Yeah, I was just going to say post-COVID, I think people really crave that and are sometimes hesitant to be the one to initiate. But there are a lot of good groups out there. Women in Manufacturing, WIM, is one that has regional chapters. I know Society of Women Engineers also has chapters. So you're really connecting and networking with people close to you. Unfortunately, we're all across the country today, but I'd imagine there's pockets of you within the area. So thanks, Stacy. That's good advice. Hannah, thoughts from you on how to be intentional in your networking internally or externally?
Yeah, so inside your company, I found if you have a women's network, you should definitely join it. I am a little biased because I run a women's network, but I think having that community and connection of people that are like you or allies, they just get it. And so when you're going through a tough time or even happy times, they're there to celebrate. And then outside of work, keeping up with connections has been really important to me. So keeping up with the people I met from college. And then also, there's a lot of people who have since left my company that we still see each other, some of us once a month and at least once a year. And so, like Megan said earlier, there's seasons for networking. And so, not every one of those people I contact every day, but just keeping up the connections of people you've met, or even as simple as like letting them know you're there if they get a promotion or a certification on LinkedIn and just saying congrats. I found that just kind of lets the person know you care and that you're checking in. I will say I don't love LinkedIn. Like, I don't think it's the greatest networking opportunity, but I do think it's a way to connect. And I found the most meaningful connections on LinkedIn are people I've met once or twice, and then am able to keep up with them. I am not one for like cold calling on LinkedIn. It really scares me. I think it's more my own bias. So, but keeping that as a social platform for people I've met once or twice in the professional sense has been really helpful for me.
Just add, I know there's a lot of books and articles written about how to network. A lot of times we don't talk about making friends as an adult, right? Networking in many ways can be friendship, and a lot of friendships can turn into really great mentorships or menteeships. So I would recommend to everybody, Dr. Marissa Franco is somebody I actually met at a networking event, but she works for the University of Maryland and she does research on friendship with adult friendships, and she wrote a book that came out last year all about making friends as an adult. And so I would really recommend it to anybody to check out, especially somebody who's maybe a little bit more introverted or a little bit more shy. You're probably in great company with other people who are just as uncomfortable as you are. And so thinking about it in terms of, not just trying to make a professional gain, but making personal connections is a great way to reframe it for yourself.
And we spend so much time at work. It might as well be enjoyable as possible with as many friends as we can pull together in that space. So good advice, Megan. And if you'll drop the name of that book into the chat, that way folks can follow up and purchase it on their own.
Absolutely.
So I guess my last question, and all three of you, I'd love to hear your perspectives on this. Just a sentence or two. What do you wish you had known sooner in your career? Thinking about our audience today, many of them are young professionals or maybe midway through their career looking to make a change. What is, one or two things that you wish you had known earlier? And that's a tough one. So I'll let you all decide who goes first if you need a minute to think about it. I totally understand.
I can go first. I think it was actually a Manufacturing Institute webinar where I learned this from Caitlin from Captivating Co. The biggest lesson I've learned is if you don't tell your own story, other people are going to make assumptions for you and tell your story. So be your own advocate in your career and not just say yes to opportunities, but make it known what you want to do, which can be kind of scary to say that I want to be a manager of the company when you're just an advanced industrial engineer. But making that known, people know to reach out to you when there's the opportunity. Because sometimes you get tapped on the shoulder without saying it, but often you're much more likely to hear that if you tell someone, this is where I want to go with my career.
Yeah, I think that's especially true for women, that we think if we do a good job, people will notice it and they'll ask us to step into a new role. And that certainly isn't the case. So to be an advocate for yourself is powerful advice. Stacy, what are your thoughts on what you wish you had known sooner? I feel like you know everything at this point.
Oh, no, I'm not finished. I'm definitely not finished. Work in progress, always will be. Yeah, and what I wish I had known sooner, someone had to tell me, and I talk about this on a video that INEOS made about the anniversary of Title IX from last year, right? And so we did a big video on how things have changed for women in the workplace and in the world and how they haven't changed. And I told this story about how when I was offered a new position and I accepted it, and they were saying, my boss was saying, good luck. He was still going to be my boss. I just had a new, much larger role. And I said, well, don't worry. I watched how Dave did it. These are the real names. And I watched how John did it. And what else are they going to be called? So it was Dave and John, and I got it, and he said, no, hang on. No, we're hiring you to do it. And we want you to be yourself. And I was 49 and I had never been told that. I had never thought of that. It's a true story. And I was like, oh, can they handle it? And so honestly, I went 1,800 miles away and I thought, well, nobody will know. They didn't know me very well. And I was me, like a lot of me all the time. And I had the best time and it was so fun. And I'm so sad that I had to wait till I was 49. So I was appropriate. I watched people's boundaries, but if it needed to be said, I said it. If it needed to be done, we talked about how to do it. And so that meant that I had to know who I was. And I had to know what I valued and what was important to me. And I had done a lot of work about that already in my life for a variety of reasons. And so I was really ready. And so I wish I had taken advantage of all of that work to know who I was so that I could be me and do my career, my whole career as myself, right? So yeah, that was really, really important to hear. And so I can't wait for the next chapter to unroll and see what that's going to be.
Yeah, better late than never to hear that, and how reassuring to hear just be you. I feel like we say it all the time, but it's much harder to do than it is to say.
It is. Thank you.
Megan, what do you wish you had known sooner in your career? What others you hope know or find out soon?
We've done this exercise together before, Isabelle, but I think being able to articulate and name your values, as I mentioned earlier, is really, really critical, and a really easy way to do that I wish I had known years and years ago is if you think about a peak experience you've had in your life. So what is a story that you can recall of your life when you were most fulfilled, feeling really happy, feeling really ambitious, whatever it is. If you can actually tell that story to somebody and have them tease out for you some of the things that they're hearing for that story, whether you were having fun, you were with your family, you were learning, whatever it is, it's a great way to be able to begin to articulate what your values are. Write them down on a Post-it, stick them to your workstation, your computer monitor, wherever you are. And when you're really in it and having one of those days where it just doesn't feel right, think about how can I lean into my values a little bit more? Maybe I need to have a little more fun. Maybe I need to laugh a little bit. Maybe I'm not feeling challenged and I need to find something else to do. It will really help you to turn around a frustrating moment. It will also help you get some clarity on what you want to do next or how you want to start working towards a goal. And my gosh, if I had done that sooner than the 2 years ago that I learned about that, I can't even imagine some of the ways that I would have either put myself out there more or even changed some situations that weren't great at the time. I probably would have approached them pretty differently.
Yep. Seems like all three of your answers are pretty similar, right? Know what's important to you, know your values, speak them, and then live them. So I hope if you all take nothing else away from today's conversation, you at least remember to do that. We have just a few minutes left, and I do have two questions that have come in. Actually, in my mind, one is perfect for Hannah and one is great for Stacy. So I'm glad that worked out. Hannah, I'll start with you. And the question that came in is talking a little bit about establishing a mentorship program specifically for frontline employees. It sounds like this individual is maybe in the process of doing that for her company. And I know you shared some great stats with me on your internal mentorship program and your production line employee participation there. So can you go into a little bit more detail about how that's worked out for DENSO?
Yeah, so for our Women's Network, kind of our keystone project is a mentorship program in our facility. It was the they're starting a couple more now, but we were the only mentorship program in North America for DENSO that was official. And so one of the gaps we haven't seen filled even in our benchmarking of other companies is production associates being in a mentorship program, and really getting to women who are at associate level wanting to get to a production manager role or a different career path. And so the biggest barrier we found at our company, kind of to get specific, was the getting them off the line, because we found that for women, if you schedule it after work, as we all have so many obligations, if you schedule it not in their time, they're not going to be able to come. If they're working overtime, they're going to have to go pick their kids up from school. They won't be able to come after their shift. And so getting and requesting time with the associates when we can pull them and actually like get them paid to be in our program, which is something you'll have to talk with your company HR on, but that has been the most successful for us. We actually just this past week recruited for our next mentorship program, and we have 35 participants, mentees, and 16 of those are production associates. And so I'm really excited for that. And I think that key point for us and what's made that successful is doing it during work hours, which isn't possible for every company, but that's what's worked for us.
That's awesome. You'll have nearly 50% as production employees. And I think proof to show we are investing in you and you're valuable to us even when you're not doing your original day-to-day role. So helpful feedback. Thanks, Hannah. The next question is for you, Stacy, and it asks if you can talk a little bit about experience working at a company that maybe didn't have any formal leadership development opportunities. I know you teach leadership training. So are there some things that the audience could take away and maybe start to interject informally into their facilities? And what are some easy kind of first steps towards that leadership development opportunities?
Sure. And I will tell you a secret that's not a secret. If you're interested in some leadership development and it's not a formal program at your company, I promise you, almost everybody around you is interested in the same thing. So it's very rare for someone who is wanting to see some change happen to be the only one that's wanting to see that change happen. So what I would recommend, and I'll tell you kind of where I would go, but what I would recommend is you find a leadership element, you find a leadership tool, and you introduce it. And you introduce it like this. You know what I'm going to start doing? I'm going to start taking my notes like this. You know what I'm going to start doing? I'm going to start making this kind of a plan for the people that work for me. And I'm going to try this. I'm just going to pilot this. And you'll be surprised the number of people that'll probably pick up and run with that themselves. And so where do you find those things? Oh, wow. Well, I started working in this field back when I had to walk, uphill both ways to work in the snow kind of days, right? So now there are so many good books. There are so many good podcasts. There are so many people you connect with. Get my email address. I'll put it in and I'll tell you what I use. But there's a long list. But find something that you like. Listen to Adam Grant. Find something from the Manufacturing Institute. What area of leadership do you think you need the most in your company? Is it decision making? Is it encouraging employees? Is it sharing information transparently? Do a little research. Do some work. Find something that you wish was being used in your organization and say, hey, I want to try this. I think this might make me better. This might help me stay better organized. I'm doing this for myself. And somebody else will probably open up and say, that's interesting. I've tried this. And sooner or later, it could slowly, but, quick, maybe even quickly get picked up. But it's just something you're trying. And that way people don't feel too threatened by it. Now that's me. That may not be everybody's style, but that's definitely what I would do, because there's so much out there on leadership. I just finished my MBA last year. And our first semester, we had to take a bunch of leadership courses. And I loved it because leadership is always developing. And it's because the generations that we manage, there's some changes, there's some differences. So get out there, read some good books, listen to some good podcasts, find tools that you think will work for you, and then gently introduce that.
Yeah. And manufacturers are known as innovators and problem solvers. So it's only natural that if you start something, people are going to jump in and support it along the way. So that's helpful advice. Well, we are coming at the top of our hour. I appreciate everybody for joining us, especially our panelists today. Everyone that's stayed on this long, please be on the lookout for an email from us next week with a recap and some resources from today's discussion, and maybe a special offer from Megan's team as well. The next time you can dial in to meet with the Manufacturing Institute will be on February 22nd. Our D&I team will host a webinar on how to hire and support the neurodiverse community. So be on the lookout for an invitation there. But we welcome your feedback, questions, additional comments. You can always reach out to us at womenmake@nam.org. And that is all I've got for you today. So be safe and stay warm. And we hope to talk to you all soon. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a good afternoon.